I gave the keynote address, and the Archbishop also shared about family values. We had a very many powerful presentations. There were others. I and the Archbishop of Uganda, Dr. Kazimba, had to leave Saturday. We were not there with them. I had to go for the judges' retreat, which had already been scheduled in Kono, but our brother Stimi Langa and others, and other pastors, I'm sure, Dr. Siroda, Martin Sempa, and others went in. They presented, I think they did their part. There was a panel they were supposed to be on to discuss a few matters. But the whole day that we were there on Friday was very, very, very useful for me. Listening to the presentations of other members of parliament from Africa, were very encouraged that they are standing firm with us. The picture you could get from there was that Uganda is taking the lead, and other African nations are ready to follow based on what Uganda will be doing. So what Uganda has so far done is giving a good example to others. For example, the Archbishop, Dr. Kazimba, made a statement in regard to what Lambeth Conference, the headquarters of the Anglican Church, had done. And he clearly and categorically said that Uganda cannot follow suit. Uganda Church is ready to secede and cannot agree with what was passed in Lambeth. So many countries in Africa had not yet made that stand, but I managed to talk to the Archbishop before that conference to really encourage him to attend, and he did attend, in spite of the fact they were supposed to have what they call the House of Bishops meeting, preparing to appoint a bishop of, I think, Busoga, and then they were also going to consecrate the bishop from Muhabra Diocese, which they did yesterday. So, but he agreed to spend a whole day there, and members of parliament, one delegation after another, were thanking him for that stand, which they said many of their countries were going to follow suit. And so that was what happened. And because I left earlier, before the conference ended, there were opportunities that came in right at the time when this conference was taking place. It was actually organized within that 1 month in which the bill against homosexuality was being tabled, discussed in parliament, and then to the committee. So it is that period that this conference was organized. So it was a short time of preparation, but at least we had the delegations come under the forum. There is a chairperson of the Parliamentary Forum on Family Values, led by Honorable Opendi Sarah. Opendi Sarah is the one who called me. She rang me and said, I'm sorry to call you late, because it was only 2 days to the event. She called me on Wednesday and the conference was on Friday. She asked that I would give a keynote address to these members of parliament. I accepted, and I had to change my program a bit, because I was supposed to be with the judges on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but I explained to the judges, and I was only with them on Saturday and Sunday instead of including Friday. So Friday, the whole Friday, I was with the members of parliament. So that forum, the one which organized, and the deputy speaker and the speaker, of course, were in it because it involved a bit of finances to invite all these delegations. So along the way, during the conference that day when it started, there was opportunity to meet the First Lady, and then the First Lady convinced the President and also it was arranged on Saturday. So I asked Brother Stephen Langa to share with you the details of what transpired, but also the matter that we are dealing with now about children, about family values, about our stand as Africans, about how we need to galvanize our members of parliament to do similar, what our members of parliament here are doing is what we expect other members of parliament in Africa, so that we speak with one voice, so that we make that stand as Africans together and reject the infiltration, the influence, the manipulation, the intimidation that the West is seeking to do at the moment. I trust Brother Stephen is online, so I'll ask him now to take over as we agreed. Welcome,
Thank
Brother
you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Bishop. I just want to really thank God for the opportunity and the privilege that God gave me to attend this meeting that Bishop has just mentioned. Just a little background. This meeting actually came as a miracle. There is an agreement, a trade agreement between the European Union and African states, Caribbean and Pacific states. There's already an existing agreement which started in 1975, trade agreement. And that agreement was renewed in the year 2000. And so it has been running where there's, trade between these parties. Then, recently, the European Union wanted to renew or to make another, because that one is kind of coming to an end. So they wanted now, they came up with now a new one, a new draft. Now, the interesting thing is that in this new draft, inside there, they put human rights as a very major thing. And the human rights they're talking about is not just ordinary human rights, but the human rights that includes all these LGBTQ values and agendas and so on, and which includes comprehensive sexuality education as well inside there. So you imagine a trade agreement. How do you, from trade now, include this? And the way the agreement is being drafted it's not just an agreement, but it's a treaty which is binding. And the way it was being designed is that when you sign, then automatically you will have the same position as Europe when it comes to the UN. Now, why is that important to them? Somehow, this LGBTQ thing has, especially sexual orientation and so on, has not yet been agreed upon at the UN level, at the UN General Assembly. It has not been. Always, whenever it is brought, the African nations plus the Islamic nations, Caribbean and so on, they oppose it. So it has never had the majority. So now, in this new agreement, the Europeans made it a trick in such a way that once you sign this trade agreement, automatically you will, at the UN, you will relinquish your right to stand as a nation, but now you will stand with whatever Europe says or wants. So this is the argument now that was being proposed. And African states were, they didn't realize this, they were just going to sign, and our heads of state were just going to sign, as usual, because, this is a trade, just see on the top, trade agreement with Europe, just sign. But the thing was camouflaged inside there so cleverly that, it was a trick, really. We are going to sign and without knowing this. So, fortunately, this thing came to our knowledge. So, so when it came to our knowledge and all that, we tried to see what do we do. So anyway, from our lobbying with the colleagues in the US, at the UN level, the pro-family caucus there, the head of the pro-family caucus there, and also we have some friends, brethren in Europe who are Christians and who also see this evil. And those of us in Africa here, we got together, analyzed that document, came up with what the issues are, and we started seeing how to lobby our governments. And so it is that lobbying underground that helped to mobilize, and first of all, to bring, you remember the meeting where the Right Honorable Tayebwa gave a very, very powerful speech internationally, and, said for us, this thing. Now, that stand that the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker made out there was as a result of the lobbying, underground lobbying over this matter. So now, what happened was that when the Honorable Tayebwa and others from Malawi really resisted, Malawi, thank God, we have very good allies there, brethren in the Lord. So when they resisted in one of the preliminary meetings,
tell them that, Brother Stephen, tell them that the president in Malawi is born again currently. He was.
That's right.
What we have here as Bishop Simon Peter Emiao, the chairman of Evangelical Fellowship, is who became the president there. He was a minister of the gospel, a preacher, and then he ended up being the president in Malawi. Thank you. I was just adding that.
Yes, Bishop, that is very helpful. And so his government, and so his minister, there's a MP called Asylum, and he was actually present in this meeting, in that particular meeting. So they put up a real fight there and exposed this matter, and of course the Europeans were not happy, but that woke up members of the African parliaments, but it wasn't strong enough. It was at least it kind of put a halt to because by that time now, the talk was, the presidents are going to be signing this thing soon. So, hurry, finish this thing quickly because the associates are going to sign this. So when Honorable Tayebwa and a few others like Malawi put up a resistance, it kind of disturbed the agenda. So when it disturbed the agenda, they went back and drafted the thing, coined another strategy. And now the strategy they coined, when they realized there's resistance, was they decided now to split the coalition, to split African states, split Pacific and Caribbean, so that they're in small pockets, so that now the power of unity is not there, so that they can now be more manipulated and more pressed and more whatever, so that they can comply. So when that happened, we realized that this thing is getting too serious. Parliaments need to know, because in all this, they were ignoring parliaments, and yet parliaments are the ones that make laws that affect people's lives. And that's where parliaments had to come in. Because before it was just trade, okay, trade, then the trade minister and foreign affairs, would handle that because that's trade. But the minute now you bring in behavior, you bring in comparative sexuality education, you bring in human rights, you bring in whatever, then automatically that falls in the docket of parliaments. Parliaments have to know because they're the ones who represent the people, and they have, if anything is going to affect people's behavior and lives in that category, those fall in the category or docket of parliament. So, but these people now had decided to ignore parliament, just deal with the trade ministers and just those officials, those technocrats, and ignore parliament. And so when parliament realized this, they realized, oh my gosh, something really serious is happening here. So it's as a result of that problem, or the need to awaken the parliaments of Africa, that we thank God through Honorable Tayebwa. He offered to host the African parliamentarians prior, it was done at this time, prior to the signing of this agreement by heads of state, which is scheduled for June. And so that's why this meeting took place. So that's the genesis of this meeting. And so it was just decided, indeed, as Bishop said, just within a month. It was just like a joke. So, then of course, Honorable Onopendu was asked to lead it, to work it out and so on. And really, to make a meeting of this sort, it takes you years or months, to do. But the fact that this was done within 1 month is a miracle. And so that's what this meeting was all about. And so the meeting took place, and even to get our own Bishop to come and address that. Oh, these are miracles, because it was a last-minute thing. It was a last-minute thing because they realized that we need the religious leaders. We need, their input on this matter, because they realize they can't handle this thing by themselves. And so that's why the first inter-parliamentary conference on family values and culture, family and cultural values, was held. Now, in the meeting, 22 African nations were represented. We had a deputy speaker from one of the nations, but the majority were members of parliament who were sent by their parliament, parliaments. And more would have come, but the notice was short, as you can imagine. And they accepted and apologized because of the short notice. But many of them agreed. They said whatever is determined in Uganda, they're going to follow suit and they're going to be part of it. So the 2-day meeting took place. And the first day when Bishop was there, he was a keynote speaker, and he gave a very, very good speech, which we really thank God for. It laid the foundation. He talked about the difference between empires and nations, which was really relevant for the members of parliament to understand the context in which we are meeting, and God's mind on issues of governance and the issues of nations, and how God is more for nations. Then other dignitaries spoke and all that, and then it was opened up for our stand and what we need to do as parliaments. Now, as God would have it, on the first day in the afternoon, there was Uganda Youth Conference taking place at at the State House in Entebbe. And it so happened that I was one of the facilitators. I was one of I was a panelist in that. I think this is they call the youth conference that Mama usually holds from time to time. And so because of Zoom, it was done both physically and on Zoom. So many, many young people were there and so on. So as God would have it, while the young people were having lunch before they met with, before they went for the meeting where Mama was the host, the delegation of MPs, which was of African members of parliament, which was meeting at Entebbe, came to meet Mama before she, before the conference. And so, as God would have it, I happened to be in that meeting as well. The circumstance which brought me there is different because I wasn't part of the delegation of the African members of parliament, but I was there anyway. So in that meeting, the head of the delegation, Honorable Saro Pendi, among the things that they mentioned, briefed Mama on what's happening, what they're doing, and so on. They made a final request and said, Mama, if it is possible, because of the importance of this matter, we would really wish to see His Excellency. So if there's any way that that is possible, we would be really honored. Even if it is a short meeting or whatever, we'll be honored. So that request was made around, 1 or 2 p.m. On that day after our bishop had already left. So by end of the day, the confirmation had come that His Excellency was ready to meet the delegation the following day. Now, that in itself is a miracle. That is a miracle. And, brethren, as you see God do things, I mean, we are amazed. I'm amazed. What God has done in the last 48 hours, in this nation is nothing short of a miracle. And, there's an expression that this is of tectonic dimensions. Now, tectonic are the plates on which continents rest, like Africa is on one tectonic plate. Now, when they move, they are the things that cause tsunamis. For example, the tsunami that we saw that destroyed many people, the tsunami that destroyed Japan some years ago. Those happen when tectonic stones, or rather plates, move. Now, what we've seen, what I've observed is of that dimension in the spiritual realm, and that dimension on this continent, and in terms of the future of our continent and the future of the world, really, because Africa is part of the world. We've seen that. And as we've been saying here, that we are in the middle of a reformation. We're in the middle of something of that dimension. Now, the day came for us to meet His Excellency. And we went there, and actually they took the whole delegation, and we went there. And so we had about 5 or 6 specific people to speak and share with His Excellency what was actually happening. And so the time came, and the speeches began. And one of the things that was brought before him was the issue of that agreement. The agreement between Europe, Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific islands. It was explained to him what the issues are and what the problem is. And that a member of parliament from Malawi was there himself, who has really been, who has known the matter right from the beginning up to it, was there and spoke to His Excellency himself over what was happening. Then we had a doctor, Dr. Wahome. Dr. Wahome is a senior doctor from Kenya, and Dr. Wahome is part of the Catholic Doctors, Association of Catholic Doctors in Wahome. Now, I've met Dr. Wahome before. Dr. Wahome is among the doctors who actually found out that in certain vaccinations, there was this thing that makes people sterile, girls sterile. It was their group that actually did the tests and discovered that many, many years ago. So some of you may remember that. Dr. Wahome was among those. So he took the stage to talk about, and he talked about three things. He talked about the issue of abortion and how the wording that is being used can be misleading and can actually be used to force the nation to legalize abortion without knowing. So then he went and talked about the issue of intersex children. And he said that an intersex child, because homosexuals are using that, intersex child. He says an intersex person is, first of all, he said, we doctors are not the ones who assign somebody's sex. We only observe. We see between the legs of a person, and can tell it's a boy or a girl. But there's a group whose formation is deformed. And when it is deformed, it's not very clear whether it is a boy or a girl, even if you see between the legs. So he says we do other tests. There's a genetic test they do, and if that one is not conclusive, there's another, say about 3 tests that they do. And if for some reason they're not conclusive, then they can just say what they think. Then the child continues. Then there's a secondary puberty now comes in around adolescence. Now, when adolescence kicks in, then whatever real gender they are is on which will now manifest at that time. And he says that it is at that time, at the secondary one, that if they had made a mistake as doctors before, that's the only time when now somebody who you thought was actually a girl is now a boy. And that one, it is not like anything changes, just that their assessment wasn't good enough. And so he said that is the only legal situation where somebody who was a man can be change the documents to a woman, or vice versa. He said that's the only way, that's the only natural way where it exists. Anything else does not apply. So that one, he mentioned that. Now, you see, usually homosexuals want to use that, which is a natural thing, to justify the unnatural. And that's the trick of homosexuals in many, many things. For example, they said the blacks were discriminated. So we are also being discriminated just like the blacks. Now, that argument doesn't arise because the blacks are blacks genetically. They didn't choose to be blacks. But you chose to go into homosexuality, or you chose to put into practice that feeling or that temptation. And the two are therefore not the same. But those are the arguments that they use. So Dr. Wahome knocked out the intersex, which the homosexuals use. Then he said there was an experiment. The man, and I forget his name, but I've written it somewhere. The man who coined the word sexual orientation. That guy got a twins. There were 2 boys who were twins. And So somehow, accidentally, one boy's penis was cut off. I don't know, then surgery or whatever, but anyway, it was cut off. So the parents didn't know what to do. So they went to this man who was the expert at that time. So the man said, oh, no problem. This one now, we're going to change him into a girl. So just don't even tell him he's a boy, just let's treat him as a girl and so on. So he was the technical expert on this kid. So they gave him a girl's name and everything and treated him as a girl. When the girl reached about 7 or 8 there, he began to apply female hormones on him. And he developed, the female voice and all these things, that female features that happen. But inside him, he felt funny, and that he wasn't so happy. So that gentleman, that young man, the parents, realized this boy really, things are not good. So at around 22 or 23, they decided, we better tell him the truth. So they told him the truth, that actually he was a boy. So when they told him the truth, he changed his name from whatever female name had been given to a man's name. So he went. Of course, very, very sad and very, very unhappy. And at 30 something, 31 or 32 or 33, he committed suicide. Now, it was very sad. Then his brother, the twin brother, also watching his brother going through all this and everything, he also committed suicide subsequently. Then the father, regretting that he made a mistake to take his child for all this, also committed suicide. Now, that was the technical work of the man who coined the whole word of sexual orientation. You see? So sexual orientation actually doesn't work, and it is fake. It's fake. And this confirms what I've been saying here in this part, that the whole gay machinery, the whole gay philosophy is based on fake, something which is fake, on lies. There's nothing true about it. There's nothing true about it. And he also mentioned that the word gender was not meant for human beings. I'm told a language like French, a table can be given, a he or a she, according to their language, something is assigned femininity or masculinity. And that is called gender when you're referring to an object. Okay, the city is, maybe a he. The library is whatever. So it was used for objects, not human beings. Human beings were male and female. So this man, the people who were sexuality and gender are those now who brought gender and brought it into human beings, and now in order to go beyond the male and female. So this is what I said before the president. Then the third thing doctor said, that we are being told that what happens between two consenting adults is not a matter that anybody should do. Interfere with. And this is one of the things that even Andrew Mwenda says, that, the state shouldn't be concerned about what happens between two consenting adults. Then doctor said, what about incest? Where does it happen? What about women who come for abortion? What brought that abortion? Was it public? Was it done in public? It wasn't. What about, we in the medical field, we are facing so many huge load of sexually transmitted diseases and a huge load of, having to provide medical attention for things that happen in secret between two people. Yeah, two consenting adults. So, so you completely knocked down that argument that what happens between two people, that does not matter. It matters. It matters. So he knocked that down. Then others came and, also said, and then the Kenyan MP, there's a Kenyan MP. The Kenyan MP stood up and said, Your Excellency, we thank you for the way you have really stood for the African continent on public affairs. And if Africa was a nation and we were to select a president, Your Excellency, you are the one we would choose because of the way you have stood for Africa in the public sphere. And he went on to say that really we want to ask you to call on other presidents so that they too can follow the example of Uganda. And then he said, we therefore would request you, because the whole of Africa is watching what you're going to do. We commend what the Parliament of Uganda has done. Even we ourselves in Kenya, we are going to table a bill. It's already in the process. It's going to be called, he gave it the name, family something, but which is going to really deal with the issue of homosexuality as well. Then he said even our colleagues in Ghana are already in the middle. And by the way, Ghana was present as well. And the gentleman who actually tabled the bill in Ghana, although he didn't come, he spoke to us by Zoom. But nevertheless, the deputy speaker of Ghana came and he was there. Although he had not arrived by the time we met His Excellency, he arrived afterwards. But it was mentioned that Ghana is already having, they already have a law. And actually, this deputy speaker spoke last evening because that's when the delegates gave the press conference. And he mentioned that actually the bill has already been accepted by the parliament and now it is at committee level. And he says the way the mood is in the country, they are going to pass it and they're going to, it is going to be law. And so His Excellency was, and then Malawi is also in the process of doing a similar law. And so the Kenyan MP appealed to His Excellency and said, His Excellency, we request you to sign this bill because all of Africa is looking at you. We're waiting for you, and we are all going to follow the example of Uganda. You are going to be our example. So that was said. And of course, as those things are said, people are clapping, even standing ovation is being made, as such statements were made before His Excellency. So eventually, the speeches were finished, and then His Excellency came. So essentially, His Excellency said that the time for Africa to take her own future in their hands has come. And he said, who said that we are poor? And who said that we are dependent on those, on the funds that are coming from those? We can make it and we can do it. So he gave a very, and from time to time, people are clapping, people are making standing ovation, even while he's still speaking. And when it came to the bill, he said, well, it has not yet reached my desk. But when it reaches my desk, I'm going to call you, members of parliament, and I'm going to call some of you, and even you. Yeah, sorry, I've gone too fast. when he came, he said, but this thing of homosexuality, is it nurture or is it nature? Then he said, okay, I've had people here say something, but I'll not. You, Dr. Wahome, come back. Dr. Wahome, come back and clarify this. Is it nature or is it nature? So Dr. Wahome came back and made it very clear and said, Your Excellency, this is not a genetic thing. This is a behavioral matter. It's a behavioral matter. Studies have been done and everything. It is a behavioral matter. And whatever, is learned can be unlearned. So doctor was very, very, very clear about that. And then he called Dr. Wahome the third time, because he just clarified on that one first and then went and sat back. Then again he spoke, His Excellency spoke. Then he came, but this thing of children, what is the real development of children on these sexual matters? Is it possible for you, Dr. Wahome, to come back? Yeah, Dr. Wahome, come and tell us. So Dr. Wahome came back and said that children, when they are born, they are not conscious of their sexuality, or their sexuality and so on. And he said that the time they begin to be aware is around just before puberty. Pre-puberty is when they begin to, to be aware and all that. But he said that for a person for their brain to develop to the level where they can really assess risk properly comes in at around 21, 22. That's when now somebody can really. So he said this issue of teaching children sexuality, saying that they're going to be making better decisions, so that one doesn't arise. That one is null and void. So this thing of teaching children, early, and so you are just, they don't have what it takes to handle that. And this is one of the things that I've been saying before, that sexual matters are things that require emotional maturity first. You have emotional maturity, but you're emotional mature first, then you can handle sexual matters. But if sexual matters are brought and experience are brought to a child before that, it is like putting a 10-ton load on a bicycle. You can't handle it. So actually children are traumatized, and being exposed to all these things and being exposed to these teachings and so on, like comprehensive sexuality, is really just damaging children. So the doctor confirmed that before His Excellency. And so when His Excellency, when it came to the bill, he said, I'm going to call you, members of Parliament. We sit together, and even you are home, we'll call you, we sit down, and we work together how we can secure the children of Uganda. So that's how we concluded that matter, and we celebrated, and we really were happy. Then we went to photography, then delegation after delegation would take pictures with him and so on. We left very, very happy to go back. And then His Excellency even offered a treat. He treated the whole delegation for dinner at Ndere Troop. So Saturday night we were at Ndere Troops, and people saw, people were really amazed to see the cultures, and the wonderful performances that those people had. So what happened now, because of seeing His Excellency and the subsequent plans, we were not able to conclude the meeting on Saturday. And so it was, in fact, we thought we would go and conclude at Ndere Troop. But when we got there, obviously, the atmosphere was like, it is not possible. So we said, okay, let's convene at 9:00 yesterday. And so indeed, we convened at 9:00. And of course, by that time, some people have begun to leave, others were leaving and all that. So a group of us sat there from around 10:00. We worked express. And now, what were we working to do? We were working to prepare a communique, or something that was going to come out of Entebbe. So what we decided was that what is going to come out of Entebbe is going to be called the Entebbe Principles. Entebbe Principles. Now, Entebbe Principles is going to mirror what they call, now I forget the names, there's a town in either Thailand or whatever, where a group of homosexuals sat down in a similar meeting. They coined what should be internationally acceptable as far as homosexuality and gay rights is concerned. And they called it by that name, that, those principles. And the whole of the UN now, the things that are being pushed down our throat here are those principles from that meeting. So we decided we are coming up with the Entebbe Principles, which is going to be the document that is going to mirror or to lay the foundation for Africa in terms of our family values, in terms of our cultural values, in terms of family, so that we is a thing that is going to determine what Africa stands for. And so that's what I decided to call it, the Entebbe Principles. And so we worked on the Entebbe Principles, and the media is waiting there at the back door. They waited hours, 2 p.m., 4 p.m., 8 p.m. We are there. You just go to the toilet and come back. And then the food was even brought in the food. You don't go to the restaurant. Food was brought there, lunch. You just go get lunch. We continue. We finished around 9 something, around 9 p.m. something. And so we just had the document being polished, but got the highlights, and the highlights is what was given to the media, and the rest of the document is going to be polished and then sent to the capitals of Africa. So really, this was history. So for the first time now, we Africans are coming up with our own document, which is going to govern us in terms of family and so on. And the purpose of this document is so that if you confront a president, an African president, instead of an African president battling with his mind and to see, to be politically correct and so on, just refer to the Entebbe Principles. The Entebbe Principles is what we are going by, and is what is covering our whatever. Because you see that as Africans, why do we have to wait for other people's principles and other people's declaration? You hear the Maputo Declaration on abortion, which Planned Parenthood was on, which made. Then you hear Cairo this, Cairo, there, which other people with other interests and with other genders are the ones. So this time, Africans have taken the matter in their own hands, their own future in their hands, and we have decided that we are not going to bow down to what a donor is saying, to what a funder is saying, or what another government is saying. We are sovereign. But the sovereignty was among the things. Yeah, this covers for our family values, our cultural values, and our sovereignty as African nations. So that really is exciting. And as I was just sitting there, and we're working on this thing, we just realized, oh God, here we are. History is being made right here before our eyes. We are coming with our own principles, which is going to be taken to the capitals. And this is what now we're going to stand with. And so in a nutshell, that is what transpired. And of course, the document is very, very clear. We are outlawing all this comprehensive sexual education. We are outlawing homosexuality, all those unnatural things and what have you, and outlawing abortion, all those very controversial things, outlawing prostitution, because all those are things that, they want, they feed into it, are trying to force us to take over. But when we were at State House, you could see a sense of history. For me, really, this weekend has been, you could see a sense of history, because the way His Excellency was speaking, it was like, really, as Africans, the time has come. Yeah, the time has come for us, that this time we are not going to give in. You could sense that. And of course, if His Excellency, who is very influential in Africa, if that's the mindset that he has, then you can see that really something of tectonic dimension is taking place in Africa and around the world right now. So that is what I can say. We are still polishing the principles before it becomes public, but the long and short of it is that that's what has happened, and Africa is ready to go their own way, to take their future in their own hands. And for me now, before I hand over to Bishop, I'm seeing the important spiritual dimension of this whole thing. As this tectonic change is taking place, it needs to be undergirded with prayer. And so, brethren, this is an altar. Intercessors, please, please, please pray, because this thing has serious implications for the continent. And because of this, because now we are going to stand on our own. Yes, as His Excellency mentioned something, he said, when the slave traders came, the reason why they conquered Africa was because we had internal weaknesses. We had internal weaknesses. But that if we did not have internal weaknesses, we would have not been taken over in terms of slavery. And so what he was saying, that now, because we are going to stand on our own as Africans, or because we are definitely on a collision course with the West and the other people who have been giving us funds, so he was saying that we need to deal with our internal weaknesses so that we can withstand this whole matter. And for me, the issue of that internal weakness brings me now to the church, where I feel that the church really needs to have our act together so that we can help to guide the nation and to play our prophetic role, to play our priestly role, to guide the nation. Because now we can no longer depend on others. We can no longer depend on other nations. And so we have to survive, and we have to now make it as African nations. And the role of the church is critical in this. If the church does not play her role, we are finished, because without the church, I don't think we can survive. So that's what I can say, and that's what transpired. Over to you, Bishop.
Praise be to God. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. I think now everybody is now clear of what was going on. Thank you so much, Stephen. You're very good at bringing issues and summarizing. You feel like we feel like all of us were there, because you were able to bring out all the salient issues that involved. I am sure all of us are in agreement and unanimous that God is working in our time. How He has arranged all this is just amazing. I can't even understand how I address the African members of parliament, how Honorable Sarah Opendi caused me to be part of this. And I remember when they called me, they said, we really want you to speak to His Grace, the Archbishop of the Anglican Church, because he had kind of refused to attend the meeting because he was so involved with their consecration of the new bishop, the House of Bishops. And I remember I had to talk to him very early that morning, and I said, all of us have gotten this at a very short notice, but when I explained to him the importance of this meeting, I said, Your Grace, I think it is important that we see this as part of our responsibility, part of our prophetic role, to go and support these members of parliament. Just our being there and attending would still make a big difference. Unfortunately, he listened and he said, I think, okay, let me change a few things, send me the program, I'm going to come. And his coming there was very, very good, because everybody appreciated for him having made that stand about the Anglican Church in Lambeth was very, very, many of these members of parliament from other countries had heard about that stand, and just his being there was important. So we feel that God has sucked us into this for a purpose. And so a few days ago, we met I met with Dr. Magara, Leban Jumba, and we discussed the reason why we need to pray. And that's what I want to end with. And I'm glad Stephen ended on that note. This is something that is very important. We are at the crossroads as a nation. This matter is very, very critical. If Uganda takes that stand, we are going to have many African nations follow suit, but that will be the beginning somehow of our independence, because if the West decides to cut our aid, I think for me it would be good, because much of our corruption comes because of all these aids that comes and all these donations. When you have a few resources, and the resources are meager, then you cannot afford to have it swindled or squandered. So that by itself changes everybody, because the money you have is little, then you cannot afford to allow corruption to enter in that. So it definitely would change the way we do things. But beyond and above that, when that happens and we make that stand, this is what will happen, that the nations, when they are cut, then our trust will be in God. A prophecy was given last year in October that something is going to happen in Uganda, that Uganda, just like the revival in the early last century, that is 1935, when the East African revival started in Uganda and spread all over Africa, that something else is going to happen. This was in October last year. I heard it, and it went like this, that Uganda will be known at the global level, and there will be a spiritual movement that will start in Uganda, and it will spread. They said it will first go to West Africa, then North Africa, then Southern Africa. It was like that, something like that. But I can't remember clearly where it would start, but they mentioned the West, North, and South, that it would start and then it would spread. And that God is going to cause Uganda to discover so many minerals that we had never known we have, and that still bring a lot of wealth and prosperity in this country. Look, what I was thinking and praying about as I was listening to all this, especially these last few days, was where we make a stand for the Lord and for righteousness, the Lord himself, would honor the stand of godliness, that if it was money that was making you compromise and you've refused to compromise, then I will bless you, then I will prosper you as a nation, and especially the part I liked was that will be known globally as a nation that fears God. And to me, that is very great, wonderful. So what we have agreed, we agreed in that meeting with Leban Jumba Magara. We called for a prayer and fasting for the whole month of April, starting from Saturday, the fast, and we are going to go up to the end of the month, fasting during the day and breaking the fast during the night. When we are sitting with the Archbishop Kazimba, we spent the whole day together, and he said he had already declared the fast. In fact, he broke his 3-day fast there. He told me I've been going 3-day full praying and fasting without food, without water. And he said, I am just bringing it now. And he said, we have a Lent period, but I personally took on that. And I was telling him about what we have declared and how we are going to go around the country. We will be going across the country. We have identified 23 places where we will be meeting. We are calling people to pray fast, Jinja, Yiganga, Mbale. So what Brother Stephen has been sharing is what we are going to be sharing with the pastors across the country and women leaders, women intercessors, so that what we will have started will continue we are going to raise the level of prayer. This time is not just this altar, but all the altars. We want all of them energized, and I'll be sending a one-pager that we have done to indicate that the first week, this is what we'll deal with. The second week, the first week, this week now, that is 2nd to 8th, is boys, men, and fathers. Second week, let me see if I can show it before we close. So this is what it is like. The first week of April, boys, men, and fathers. Second week, girls, women, and mothers. Third week, families. Fourth week, police environment for families. This has to do with the laws passed and the policies and so on. Then the last week, prayer and declaration day for the family and the future generation. So this is a simple outline that we have made, and we have sent it across so that everybody gets involved. But we'll be going across the country in these different places, and we'll be having many of our brethren, like Stephen, as he's been talking about family, talking about boys, students, sensitizing people about homosexuality. We're going to summarize all this information that Stephen has just said here in forms of audio, video, and the booklets, because so many people are ignorant. That's why the homosexuals have managed to infiltrate our ranks, our churches, our schools, they have managed to do that. And they use a weapon that we should not speak about it, because if you speak about it, you create it. No, that is a lie. And that's what they have managed to do. For them, they don't want us to speak about it while they continue to speak about it, while they continue to use comprehensive sexual education in everywhere. While for us, we are keeping quiet and we are saying no to that now. And so we are working on that. We are setting up a task force of sensitization, and we are soon having a retreat of interreligious council in which we're going to discuss the ways in which we are going to intensify the law is good, but the law is not an answer. The law is like a refrigerator where you put an orange, you pause the process of corruption. But as soon as you bring the orange out and put it there, the corruption will continue. So the law helps us to keep sin at bay, but we have to do something more. We have to change people from within, because the law does not change people. The law keeps sin at bay. It only helps us to stop that infiltration. We still have to preach the gospel. We still have to speak to sharpen the conscience of the nation and the society in order to have a sustainable transformation and revival. So those are the summaries. Stephen, I want to thank you again, and everybody else, we want to thank you for coming this morning. We will continue on this tomorrow. And as I said, please join in the prayer and fasting. We are believing God for a mighty revival, which God has declared will be coming. And Uganda will be the best, will be the foundation, will be the location where God has decided that revival to start. And we need a lot of funds to go across the country. We are trusting God to raise those funds. And so we need your prayers and support in case God speaks to you. Thank you very much. And I think our time is done. Brother Bishop Kabuye, can you conclude for us?
Thank you so much, Bishop. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much for that elaborative explanation to know exactly what's going on in the heavenlies and in our nation. Beloved, let us embrace it seriously and let us inform and alert